Hello again from Green Island Gardens. Visitors to the garden come through the entrance here from the house, and the first thing they see is this beautiful salvia. So today I want to just run you through a few of the salvias that we grow here for late summer and autumn colour. They're one of the best plants for keeping the colour going right through to the first severe frosts that we have. This one is called Salvia Amistad, and I think it's probably the best salvia that you can grow. Every garden should have one. They're just so easy. This has all grown from the base this year, and it's reached an amazing height, well over 6 feet. The leaves on all salvias are beautifully scented, and they always smell a fruity sort of smell, almost like currants, black currants or red currants or something in that sort of family. The only problem you might have with them, and this one, when it comes from the ground first thing in the spring and it fails to get going, is that slugs are quite partial to them. So a handful of pet-friendly slug pellets, or alternatively, better still, beer traps, just as they're starting to emerge from the ground in April. Other than that, I don't have to do anything to it. It doesn't need dead-headed, it just keeps continuing flowering right through till December. As I say, this one I think is the best one. Some people said they struggle with it. I would think it's probably because the ground is too wet in the winter. If it's not too wet, it should be fully hardy. But just as a safety precaution, I always take a few cuttings and pop them in the greenhouse, just in case we have a really serious winter. Alternatively, I can often lift one plant out of the ground, pot it up, and just keep that in the greenhouse. And if we do happen to lose the ones in the garden, I've got that one there to use for cuttings in the spring. I got very excited this year when a certain garden company was advertising a new variety of salvia, and it was called Pink Amistad. So I imagined that it would grow to the great size and height of the normal Amistad, the deep indigo blue one. This is the ones that I've grown this year, and I have to say, as yet, the jury's still out. I'm a little bit disappointed with the small amount of growth they've put on. Maybe they will be better next year, but even so, the colour is just a little bit pale. I thought it was going to be much, much stronger and vibrant. But we'll watch this space and see if they do better next year. This variety, on the other hand, is quite a vigorous one. This is called Salvia involucrata hardy form. Now, I used to grow an involucrata many years ago that was called Bethelii or straight Salvia involucrata, but they proved not hardy. But this one really is. It's called hardy form, and it's survived really, really cold winters here. It forms quite a large side shrub actually when it gets going, but again a profusion of flowers, beautifully scented leaves, and a really, really good doer. This is another sort of sub-shrubby type of salvia, Salvia microphylla. Same shaped flowers, beautifully scented fruity leaves. This one really is fully hardy, and I prune this one back. It's more of a sub-shrub. The previous ones I've shown you tend to go right back to the ground and grow from the ground in the spring. This one forms more of a sub-shrub, so it's got a much more woody base. If you can see here at the base here, this woody growth. And in the spring, about April time, we prune it back. You can see last year's cuts right down here, so probably about 6 inches from the ground. So we'll just literally cut it back to where we see these green shoots emerging. All this growth on the top and all these flowers, which have been going for months and months and months, have grown this year. Again, very, very easy to take cuttings from and share with your friends, but no need to. It's fully hardy here. So this is another very well-known salvia. This one's called Hot Lips, and you can see why looking at the colour of the flowers. Again, it's similar to the microphylla with the small leaves and the woody growth, so we cut it right back to about 6 inches in the spring. When it starts to flower, the flowers are nearly all red. Some of the flowers it produces later on in the summer might be just white, but once it really gets going, you get these bi-coloured flowers here, hence the name Hot Lips. Just a bit of fun, this one, but a very reliable, fully hardy variety. This is another slightly larger leaf variety, which I really like. It's called Black and Blue. The flowers here again will go on right into December, and quite often it makes quite a tall plant, this one. This is a nice spreading specimen, but quite often it will get taller, so you can grow this one at the back of a border as well. But again, very, very reliable. Now this is a lovely one, which is probably not quite so fully hardy, so I do tend to take some cuttings of this one and take them inside. This one's called Wendy's Wish. Really long flower spikes which produce these tubular flowers over a very, very long period of time. But even the past flower heads, once the flowers have dropped, they still look attractive, and the stems are quite deep maroony coloured as well. So this is the last salvia I'm going to show you. Again, it makes quite a large shrub when established. It's called Salvia confertiflora. It hasn't actually got its flowers yet because it is quite late to come into flower. You can see it's just beginning to bud up. But when it does, it's covered in these lovely long spires of orange flowers. So very exotic, and I love the colours with the autumn coloured foliage as well. This one has a slightly different, slightly curious smell. You can tell it's still a salvia, but it has been described as roast lamb, which I think is a fairly good description of it. But again, a nice one. This one's a really good one to grow in a pot as well, because you will need to bring it in for the winter. Come back to Amistad here, and the last thing I'm going to show you is just how easy it is to take some cuttings so that you've got some insurance policy over the winter with your salvias. So what I would look for is really a non-flowering shoot, about this sort of size. So you can see there, maybe a bit longer if there are, but this isn't the ideal time. We're a little bit late for doing cuttings now, but they should still work. So we just literally break them off from the main stem. See if we can find another one in here. Yes, that's a good one. Okay, so that's just perfect, something like that. So we'll take 3 or 4 if we can. There's another one. Okay, so now we'll go to the greenhouse. Okay, so into the greenhouse here. I always have a bucket of appropriate compost made up. And this is just normal compost mixed up with a little bit of perlite. And I keep it just slightly moist there. The perlite helps the drainage and stops the cuttings getting too wet and sodden. I like to use terracotta pots because these absorb the sun's heat during the day, and then they radiate it back out again, and also they don't sit too wet, they drain nicely. So the important thing with cuttings is trying to keep them moist to reduce the water loss, but not letting them get waterlogged. So here we have one of our cuttings here. If it's got a lot of leaves like this, that might actually increase the water loss. So what I'm going to do is just nip off that largest one. And then we've got here some rooting hormone. You don't actually have to use this for salvias, they root so easily, but just to demonstrate. Simply dip the end into some water, dip it into the rooting hormone, shake any excess off, make a little hole at the edge of the pot with a dibber, pop the cutting in, and then just firm it in nicely, and that's done. And then we'll do this one the same. A hole, pop him in. Yeah, and the last one. So if there's any leaves too near the base of the stem, just pull those off as well. Oh, in he goes. There. So those are all ready. Now, I'm going to put a purple in label in because I know that means Amistad, but you could write a label and pop it in. Give it a little bit of water at the top, and then pop it into the propagator. If you haven't got a propagator, very simple, just fix a plastic bag over the top with a cane and put an elastic band around the top, and you'll make a little mini propagator which you can sit on your windowsill in your kitchen. And these should root in about 6 weeks. Making the cuttings at this time of year though, I would leave them till next spring until I take them out. Just make sure the compost doesn't ever completely dry out, but other than that they should be fine until next spring, and then you've got some lovely new plants.